Juul vs cigarettes. Which one is more dangerous? In 2019, Juul exploded in popularity. They made vapes cool again. Everyone wanted one, but Juul didn't market their product towards existing vape users or even smokers. No, they went after young people who had never smoked or vaped before. At the time, Juul was a new company and they needed to gain customers fast. But what they did next would be controversial. They convinced thousands upon thousands of high school kids to start vaping. In this video, we're going to talk about how Juul positioned itself as a healthy alternative to smoking, why the use of e-cigarettes among high school students increased so dramatically, and what long-term effects this had on the company. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is about Juul Labs. In 2018, Juul was launched with the intention to help adult smokers kick their habit. When you look at cigarettes, there's a lot of things that are bad for you. There are 7,000 chemicals, and combustion is one of them. Combustion is when something burns and releases different types of smoke into the air. In the case of cigarettes, this process happens in the tobacco leaves and other ingredients. As the cigarette burns, it creates all kinds of harmful smoke, which once inhaled, damages your lungs and makes you more likely to get cancer. But then came along Juul, a company with a much better solution. Instead of burning tobacco, Juul created electronic devices that heat a liquid and turn it into vapor, which is inhaled into the lungs. This might sound a lot safer than a regular cigarette, but really the only thing it's missing is the combustion. Otherwise, it has most of the same components. And this is where our story starts. Now let's rewind back to 2018. It's been a few months since Juul was launched, and up until now, everything seems to be going great. A bunch of reviews have been written about Juul, and it looks like their device is working just as it should. If you compare it to regular cigarettes, it definitely seems like a better option. It doesn't have combustion, so it doesn't produce smoke, which means it won't stain your teeth yellow, make your breath smell, or leave marks on your fingers. But wait, Juul has a problem. While it's doing great among adults, it hasn't gained any traction among young people. And this is a huge problem because Juul wants to become a massive company, and they know they can't do it with just adults. Kids are naturally curious about new things, and Juul needs to capture their attention if they want to become popular. In 2018, Juul started buying ads on social media platforms. Ads were everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok, you name it. Juul had a budget of $40 million. Their goal was simple. They wanted to put their ads in front of as many young people as possible. All of these ads looked very flashy and appealing to young people. For example, in January 2019, Juul posted a video called How to Be Cool. It featured famous YouTubers. The video got 2.3 million views, but not everyone loved this. Some people said that Juul was trying to trick young people into starting a dangerous habit. But while there were some negative voices, the majority of people thought this was awesome. Finally, someone was trying to make vaping cool again, and Juul wasn't done yet. In March 2019, they released a new ad campaign called Become an Icon, which encouraged teens to share user-generated videos on social media. And here's the crazy part. It worked extremely well. Juul became the talk of the town. Every kid wanted one. By May 2019, Juul had captured 75% of the US e-cigarette market. It seemed like they were invincible. But behind closed doors, things were looking a lot different. Hospitals around the United States started sounding the alarm. They said that more and more children were coming in with serious health issues related to vaping. In fact, it was getting so bad that the American Hospital Association called the increase in hospitalizations due to e-cigarette use an epidemic. At this point, it was clear to everyone that Juul needed to do something. On one side, they had thousands of kids who had become addicted to their product. On the other side, they had hospitals begging them to help kids who couldn't breathe. Juul decided to do both. They would launch a major awareness campaign and try to change the way their product is perceived by the public. At the same time, they would stop selling their product to minors. In November 2019, Juul stopped advertising to young people and removed photos of models under the age of 35 from their website. But this was too little too late. In the eyes of the public, Juul had already done enough damage. The truth was that they had been successful beyond their wildest dreams. But as they grew bigger, they had lost control. Young people were vaping so much that it caused lung damage to the point where they couldn't breathe anymore. Juul didn't mean to cause this. Their goal was to provide an alternative to smoking. And sure, maybe they could have acted faster, but it's not their fault that kids were vaping so much, right? Well, not exactly. In February 2020, a report was released. It revealed something that no one expected. The report stated that 30% of middle school students and 60% of high school students used Juul products in the past 30 days. Now, how is this possible? After all, Juul stopped selling to minors, so where were all these kids getting their product from? The report showed that 40% of middle school students and 65% of high school students bought their Juul pods from stores. Only 25% of middle school students and 20% of high school students got their Juul pods from friends or family. What this meant was that adults were still buying Juul for young people, despite the product being clearly marketed towards them. On top of this, the survey also found out that 1 in 4 middle school students and 1 in 3 high school students bought Juul pods online, often from unofficial sellers. Not only was Juul still reaching underage buyers, but their product was also being sold to kids on the streets. All of this ruined Juul's reputation. You see, when Juul launched their product, they promised to change the future of nicotine. They said that their mission was to transition the world from cigarettes to smoke-free alternatives. But now it looked like they were actually pushing more kids towards smoking. And this was the turning point for Juul. By 2020, they had gone from being the hottest startup to being the most hated company in America. But it didn't just stop there. Juul was in deep water. In September 2019, Juul agreed to pay a $40 million fee. This was supposed to resolve allegations that they had misled customers about how much nicotine their products contained. Then, in December 2020, the company received a warning letter from the FDA stating that their manufacturing practices weren't compliant. In February 2021, Altria, the parent company of Juul, wrote off $6.7 billion worth of investments. In other words, they basically admitted that Juul was a total failure. Juul's net worth dropped from $38 billion to less than $2 billion. That's a 95% drop in just 2 years. And in September 2021, Juul laid off 65% of its workforce. They needed to cut costs. There was simply no other choice. But while this was bad news for Juul, it was good news for the public. Less supply and less demand meant that fewer kids were taking up vaping. In 2022, it was reported that high school e-cigarette use had fallen to its lowest level in 4 years. And in 2023, the FDA released new regulations requiring that most e-cigarettes sold in the US have a reduced nicotine level. As you can see, Juul is now in a totally different position than they were in back in 2019. Back then, they were the hottest startup in America. But now they're struggling just to stay alive. The ironic thing is that this is exactly what happened to traditional cigarettes. First, they became popular. Then they became a nuisance. And now they're trying to transform themselves once again. The lesson here is that you shouldn't mess with people's lives just for profit. Yes, Juul solved a problem. They gave smokers an alternative. But they also introduced a whole new generation to a dangerous habit. I hope this video has been helpful. Thank you for watching, and until next time.